Okay, so thanks for coming. So the title of this talk is Clever Mistakes. And the title of this whole day is Kids Say the Funniest Things. So here are some examples of the types of funny things that kids sometimes say. So these aren't made up, these are real examples from genuine kids in our database. So kids say sometimes things like, stay your eyes on that car in front, or don't say me that or you'll make me cry. And what's interesting about these things is they are mistakes. They don't sound quite right, do they? But they're pretty clever. They show some evidence of the child learning a general pattern in the language. They didn't learn to say things like that by copying their parents directly. So we know that they must have learnt them by spotting some pattern in the language and making a generalization. So imagine that a child hears lots of different things, lots of different action words in front of your eyes. Shut your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, and so on. Then what the child can do is form a generalization that you can put an action word in front of your eyes to make a new sentence. It sounds logical enough, and it is. But then if you go and put stay in that slot, it seems like it should work. Stay is an action word, kind of, but you put it in the slot, you get stay your eyes. It doesn't quite work. Same thing with, let's go back, don't blank me that. So imagine the child hears people say, don't give me that, don't feed me that, don't read me that, and so on. Then the child might think, well, okay, if I don't want someone to do something to me, I can say, don't action me that. But then if they put say in as the action, it doesn't really quite work. So there's lots of different types of clever mistakes that children make. So perhaps the most common are when children put an S on words to make a plural, in contexts where it's not quite right, and ones where they put ED on an action to talk about something that happened in the past. So if you've got children yourself who are older than this one, but old enough to have started saying this type of thing, these are the types of errors you're most likely to have noticed. So obviously the correct thing would be, Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep, or Santa brought me lots of presents. Similarly, another rule which English-speaking children learn is that you can put un before words to mean the undoing of a particular action. So you can button something, you can unbutton it, you can zip something, you can unzip something. So the child spots that pattern and thinks, right, I can put un on the start of a word to talk about undoing an action. Again, spotting this rule is pretty clever, but it can again go wrong. So here's a child who was obviously really very angry with their parent and said, I hate you and I'm never going to unhate you or nothing. And on a happier occasion, they were telling a ghost story, and they said he tiptoed to the graveyard and unburied her. So again, these have a kind of logic to them. You can see what they mean. They follow a well-known pattern, but they're not quite right. So these clever mistakes are a sign of progress. So they show that children have learned something complicated about English. So these types of errors, so when it was, what was it, sheeps. So these show that children have learned a rule that you can put S on something to make a plural. The bringed example shows that children have learned that you can put ED on the end of something to make a past tense, like with hop, skipped and jumped. And the final ones show that the child's learned that you can put un before an action to denote the reversal of that action. So it's pretty clever when you stop to think about it. The child's learned something quite complicated about English. And it might seem simple to us as people who are very familiar with English, but if you listen to non-English speakers, foreign people trying to learn English, it's obvious that these things aren't as obvious as they seem. People often make mistakes where they leave off the S to mark plural or the ED to mark past tense. So children are really doing quite well to pick up these types of rules. So let's look back to the ones that we started with to see how it works here, because they're a little bit more complicated. So the child's learned that you can have an action word and then another word which is the thing that that action's done to. So you can break a toy, bounce a ball, or move your arms. So the child, again, quite logically, thinks you can stay your eyes, as in stay your eyes on the car in front. But again, this isn't quite right. So here are some more of these mistakes. I'm going to go through all of these now. Well, in each pair, one's correct and one's a mistake, but they're very similar on the surface. It shows you quite how subtle these rules can be. So we'll go through each one, and I want you to shout out right or wrong. So don't move that. Right? Don't giggle me. Wrong. So very similar, but not quite right. Marge filled petrol into the tank. Wrong. Homer poured beer into his glass. Right, yeah, again, it follows the exact same pattern, but this one's okay and this one isn't. Shall I give you something? Yeah, obviously fine. Shall I say you something? Wrong. So what is it about, that you can give, why can you give someone something but you can't say someone something? It seems like a very fine distinction. So one possibility is that when children make a mistake, adults correct them. But actually, children don't seem to take that much notice of this type of correction from adults. So this is a very famous dialogue in the child language literature, which came from an experiment where an experimenter was recording his family in conversation with the child. And the child says, "One other one spoon, Daddy." And the dad is trying to get them to say, "Other spoon." So he says, "Can you say other spoon?" And the child says, "Other one spoon." This is just an extract. The whole thing's very long. So this goes on for a long time. And then eventually the dad says, "Can you say other spoon?" And the child says, "Other spoon. Now give me other one spoon." So it shows that the children really are quite impervious to adults' attempts to correct them. But one way that adults can help is not explicitly correcting children, but by recasting what they say using the right form. So this is particularly useful when it's just one word form that isn't quite right. So I talked about the children over-applying the ED rule for past tense. So a child reading this book might say, "The monster eated Bernard." So if you were reading this book with your child and they said that, then you could just say, "Yes, the monster ate Bernard." So you carry on, not correcting them as such, but giving the right form, continuing the story. So this goes back to the examples where I got you to shout out right or wrong, and you can see that there's some very subtle distinctions going on here. So you can break a stick, bounce a ball, and move your arms, but you can't giggle a girl, smile a brother, or laugh your mum. So this is very subtle here, but it seems like what children have to learn is that when the action is some kind of emotional expression, like giggling or smiling or laughing, you can't do that to someone. You can't expression someone. You can't giggle them, smile them, laugh them, chuckle them, guffaw them, or anything that denotes a kind of emotional expression. So children somehow have to hear all the types you can and can't say and figure it out for themselves. Oh, you can say these action words, but you can't say these expression words. So they have to figure it out for themselves. You don't need to worry about correcting your children for saying things like that. So children learn not to say these errors without much help from adults, so don't stop to correct them, just keep on talking. Thank you.